My name is Lena, and I thought I'd found forever until the man I loved posted a photo cooking in another woman's kitchen while still calling me his girlfriend. That single image shattered everything I believed about trust, love, and respect. But instead of falling apart, I stayed silent and turned that silence into my sharpest weapon. What began as heartbreak became a lesson in power, control, and the sweetest revenge, peace. Sometimes the best payback isn't rage, it's becoming untouchable. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. We need to talk tonight, he wrote, just 5 words, calm and ordinary. But nothing about that message was ordinary anymore. I had already seen what the entire internet had seen, a photo of him standing in another woman's kitchen, smiling, sleeves rolled up, looking every bit like a man who belonged there. The post wasn't leaked or taken out of context. He'd shared it himself, publicly, with her name tagged right beneath the caption. Nothing like homemade pasta. And there they were, flour-dusted and radiant like a couple playing house. I couldn't breathe for a second. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, trying to understand how the man I'd loved for 2 years could make my private heartbreak into a public performance. At 27, I had worked hard to build my life in Boston. A solid career in marketing, a small apartment with plants. I somehow kept alive a quiet confidence that I was moving in the right direction. Ryan had been part of that dream. He wasn't flashy or loud, just calm, thoughtful, the kind of man who remembered how you liked your coffee and always said goodnight. His family liked me too. His mother once said I was good for him, and I believed that meant stability, partnership, future. I thought I was safe. But that illusion shattered the moment he decided to share a photo of himself in Maya's kitchen for everyone to admire. What haunted me most wasn't even the betrayal. It was his ease, his utter lack of shame. It was as if he knew he could do it, and still text me that night like nothing had changed. The first real crack had appeared months earlier. One evening, he came home, loosened his tie, and dropped his bag with a sigh. Maya's in trouble, he said casually. Her roommate just moved out, and now she can't afford the rent. I remembered nodding, ready to offer help, maybe by sharing her roommate ad on social media. But before I could say a word, Ryan continued. So I told her I'll move in for a few weeks, just until she finds someone new. He said it so casually that, for a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. You'll what? I asked. Move in with her, he repeated, his tone almost annoyed that I didn't get it. I blinked at him, trying to piece together how this man could think moving in with another woman while having a girlfriend was acceptable. Ryan, I said carefully, you can't be serious. He frowned, as if I was the unreasonable one. She stuck. Lena, I can help. You're making this into something it's not. I felt my chest tighten. This isn't about jealousy. It's about boundaries. I tried to explain. You can help without living together. Lend her money. Find her a roommate. There are other ways. But Ryan only smirked, his voice sharp with that tone I'd begun to dread. You're being selfish. Maya's struggling, and all you care about is yourself. That word, selfish, hit like a slap. He had a way of flipping the story until I became the villain, and that night was no different. You think this is normal? I asked, my voice barely steady. To move in with another woman and expect me to be fine with it? He crossed his arms, leaning back like a teacher addressing an ignorant student. If you trusted me, this wouldn't matter. The problem isn't what I'm doing. It's that you're insecure. I just stared at him, feeling something in me crack. We argued for hours that night. I suggested options, roommate apps, temporary sublets, even covering part of Maya's rent myself, but every idea was brushed aside. He wanted to move in. That was the only solution he'd accept. And deep down, I knew it had nothing to do with helping Maya. It was about control. He moved out a week later, claiming it was temporary, just to help a friend. That same night, my phone buzzed again, a message from him. A photo. Ryan, shirtless in bed, smug grin plastered across his face. The caption, "Trust is everything." My blood ran cold. It wasn't transparency. It was humiliation. He was showing me that he could cross every line and still call it honesty. I called him, my voice shaking with fury, but when he answered, he just laughed. "I'm being transparent," he said smoothly. "You always wanted honesty." My voice broke. "Ryan, you're in her bed." He replied with a calmness that terrified me. "You're overreacting. If you trusted me, this wouldn't be a problem." That was the moment I realized he wasn't clueless. He was cruel. He wanted me to hurt, to doubt myself, to lose control, so he could call me unstable. Minutes later, another notification came through. It wasn't from Ryan, it was from Maya. Her message was short, sharp, and venomous. "If you want to keep him, grow up. Men don't like clingy girls. Don't make him choose. You won't like the outcome." My throat went dry. I'd never even spoken to her before, and here she was lecturing me, inserting herself into my relationship like she'd already taken my place. I typed, "Who do you think you are?" but deleted it. That's exactly what they wanted. My reaction, my anger, proof that I was the jealous one. So I didn't reply. I sat there in silence, letting the fury simmer instead of spill. When Ryan called again, his voice was infuriatingly calm. "I know Maya texted you," he said lightly. "She just cares." I laughed, a hollow sound. "Cares? She insults me, and you call that caring?" He sighed. "You're too sensitive. You twist everything into drama." My jaw clenched. He wasn't defending her. He was joining her. Together they were building a story where I was the unstable girlfriend, and they were the reasonable ones. "If you were more mature," he continued, "none of this would have happened. The problem is you." The words echoed in my head until they felt like poison. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the Boston lights flickering against the glass. I thought about how I had spent months apologizing just to keep the peace, swallowing my hurt to make him comfortable. But this time, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to break. When Ryan texted the next day asking to meet for dinner, I agreed. Not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted to see how far he'd go pretending to be the hero of his own story. He showed up looking calm and composed, like he hadn't detonated my world just days earlier. "Lena," he began smoothly, "every relationship needs trust. You act like I've done something terrible, but all I did was help a friend. If you were more composed, you'd see that." I didn't interrupt him. I wanted to hear it all, the rehearsed lines, the manipulation disguised as logic. "So moving in with her, sleeping at her place, posting pictures, that's normal?" I asked quietly. "That's transparency," he said, his tone coldly righteous. "I didn't hide anything. You should feel secure knowing I'm honest." I stared at him, almost fascinated. "So, what did you call me here for?" I asked. He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've made my decision. I'm moving in with Maya. It's the right thing to do. If you love me, you'll understand." I smiled faintly, a slow exhale escaping me. "So my feelings don't matter?" "This is what I have to do," he said firmly. "If you can't accept that, maybe you're not ready for something real." I tilted my head slightly. "And what if I made the same choice?" I asked. "If a male friend of mine lost his apartment and I decided to move in with him for a few weeks, would you be okay with that?" Ryan gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "That's completely different." "Different how?" I pressed. "Because I trust you," he said. "This isn't about me." "No," I whispered. "It's about control." His jaw tightened. For once, he didn't have a rehearsed answer. I stood, my heart beating steady. Not fast. You're not proving trust, Ryan. You're proving how much power you think you have. He glared, his voice dropping low. You always twist things. No, I said calmly. You just can't stand being seen for what you are. I left him sitting there, staring after me, and for the first time in months, I felt weightless. That night, he texted me, I bought a small suitcase. I'll start packing tomorrow. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing back, That's great. Don't forget to bring Maya a spare toothbrush. She might think you're unprepared. He called immediately. Lena, what's that supposed to mean? I smiled. Mean what? I'm supporting you. He went quiet for a beat too long. Stop being sarcastic. Who said I'm being sarcastic? I replied softly. I genuinely wish you and Maya happiness. For once, he didn't know what to say. The next morning, I woke up to a string of unread messages from Ryan. He had sent photos of his half-packed boxes, a picture of his folded shirts, and one short text, You're acting weird. Are you okay? I read it without emotion, my heart strangely quiet. Before, I would have written long paragraphs explaining my pain, my fears, trying to make him see me. But this time, I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to let him feel what silence sounded like. So I simply replied, I'm fine. Make sure you pack your favorite coffee mug. Maya probably has space on her counter. It took less than a minute for my phone to ring. Lena, stop with the tone. What's wrong with you lately? I answered lightly, Nothing. I'm just being supportive. You're doing such a noble thing, Ryan, living with another woman for her sake. It's inspiring. He exhaled hard, frustrated, but I stayed calm, even cheerful. I'm serious, Lena, he snapped. I don't like when you act like this. Act like what? I said, feigning innocence. I'm just happy you're finally being transparent. I could almost hear him grind his teeth on the other end. I hung up, not out of anger, but power. For once, I had control of the silence. Over the next few days, I played my role perfectly. I smiled when I saw his name on my screen, answered in polite, sugar-sweet messages, never raising my voice. Each time he sent a new photo, his luggage, his desk, the keys to Maya's apartment. I replied with lines that sounded kind but dripped with irony. Don't forget your pillow. Ryan, Maya might not like sharing hers. Make sure to label your food in the fridge. Roommates can get territorial. I imagined him sitting there trying to decode my tone, wondering when I'd explode. But I didn't. I refused to give him the drama he fed on. Without it, he looked smaller, pathetic even, like a man stranded in the middle of his own manipulation. By the end of the week, he moved in with Maya. He sent one last message. I'm settled now. This doesn't change us, Lena. We just need to build more trust. I almost laughed. He really believed I was still part of this illusion. I typed back, I trust you completely. Maya's lucky to have such a devoted friend. And then I muted his notifications. The silence that followed was blissful, almost musical. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. But peace has its own kind of sharpness. When I woke the next day, the sun spilling across my bed, I thought about everything Ryan had taken from me, not just time and love, but confidence. He had twisted my empathy into weakness. I wasn't going to let that be my story. If he wanted to play games, I'd show him what losing looked like. That's when I remembered Dylan. Dylan and I had met back in college. Steady, kind, someone who once made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled coffee on my presentation notes. He'd liked me back then, but timing was cruel. I was already with Ryan. Still, Dylan had stayed a quiet friend, the kind who never crossed lines. I hadn't spoken to him properly in over a year, but that morning I opened my messages and typed, Coffee soon? I could use a familiar face. He replied almost Instantly. Name the place. We met that afternoon at a small cafe tucked between bookstores downtown. When I walked in, Dylan was already there, leaning against the window, sunlight glinting off his hair. "Lena," he said, standing to hug me, his voice soft but surprised. "It's been too long." For the first time in weeks, I felt warmth without manipulation. I didn't plan to vent, but the moment we sat down, everything poured out. The fights, the gaslighting, the photo, the move. Dylan's expression darkened with every word. "You're kidding," he muttered. "He actually said you're overreacting." I nodded, laughing bitterly. Apparently, moving in with another woman is now an act of moral purity. Dylan shook his head. "You don't deserve that, Lena. That's not love. That's control dressed as compassion." His words hit deeper than I expected. It was so simple, so obvious, yet I had forgotten what it felt like to be understood without conditions. When we finished our coffee, Dylan smiled gently. "You look lighter already." I smiled back, though part of me felt something else, something sharper, bolder. "You know what?" I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's take a picture." He laughed, amused. "Sure, why not?" We took a selfie by the window, sunlight painting gold across our faces. I captioned it, "Some people bring peace instead of excuses." Then I posted it to my Instagram story. Within 10 minutes, my phone began to vibrate nonstop. "Ryan." 5 missed calls, 3 messages, 1 voice note I didn't even bother to open. The texts kept coming. "Who is that guy? Why are you doing this? You're trying to provoke me." I watched the screen light up again and again, then placed the phone face down on the table. Dylan glanced at me, a half smile curving his lips. "Trouble?" "No," I said, sipping my coffee slowly. Just the sound of someone losing control. When I finally answered Ryan's call, his voice was tense, clipped, almost panicked. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Lena?" I answered calmly, "Just having coffee with a friend." "You said transparency is important, right?" He went quiet, then hissed, "You're doing this to get back at me." "No," I said softly. "I'm learning from you. You taught me how to be mature, remember?" I could hear the silence on the other end, thick and furious. "Lena, don't test me," he muttered finally. I smiled into the phone. "Test you? You already failed." And I hung up. That night, he bombarded me with messages, some pleading, some angry, each one contradicting the last. "I love you. You're destroying this. You're acting crazy." I didn't respond to any. Instead, I messaged Dylan, "Thanks for today. It felt good to laugh again." He replied within seconds, "Anytime. You deserve peace." By the weekend, Ryan was unraveling. He posted a picture of him and Maya cooking dinner, trying to mirror the calm image from before. But this time, his smile looked forced, his hand awkwardly placed at her shoulder. The comments were fewer, the likes slower. People could sense when something isn't real. A few hours later, Maya posted her own story, a photo of her kitchen with the caption, "Some people can't handle when their boyfriend has female friends." I laughed out loud. The desperation was showing. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my camera, took a picture of my latte art with Dylan's blurred figure sketching in the background, and wrote, "Some people don't need to tear others down to feel secure." I hit post and set my phone aside. Within minutes, my notifications exploded again. Mutual friends started texting, curious, gossiping, supportive. One wrote, "Lena, I can't believe how calm you are. He's probably losing it." I replied with a simple heart emoji. That night, when Ryan called again, his voice wasn't calm anymore. "Enough with your games," he spat. "You're making me look bad." "Oh," I said, voice steady. "You mean like how you made me look when you posted pictures from another woman's kitchen?" He went silent. I continued, "You wanted to play public. Now you get to live with the consequences." He exhaled sharply, his frustration almost tangible through the line. "You're not the woman I fell for." "You're right," I said. "She learned her worth." He hung up. I didn't hear from him for the rest of the night. Instead, I scrolled through my own photos, the ones with Dylan, the laughter that didn't feel forced, the lightness that wasn't performative. I wasn't falling in love again, at least not yet, but I was remembering who I was before Ryan made me doubt everything. Someone who smiled without needing permission. Days passed, and the silence from Ryan stretched longer. Then one morning, I woke to a long message from him. He wrote about reflection and misunderstandings and how he missed what we had. He said living with Maya wasn't what he expected, and that maybe he made a mistake. I read it slowly, once, twice, letting the weight of irony sink in. The man who had called me insecure, immature, and selfish now realized his choices had left him alone. I typed my reply carefully. "I'm glad you learned something. Growth looks good on you. Take care." I pressed send, blocked his number, and exhaled like I hadn't in months. For the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The weeks that followed felt strange at first, as if I was learning how to breathe again. Every sound in my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of the curtains, felt louder, clearer, like silence itself was reminding me that peace had a voice too. I stopped checking my phone constantly. I stopped replaying our old messages or wondering what Ryan was posting. The addiction to pain took longer to fade than I expected, but one morning I realized I'd gone a full day without thinking about him at all. That was the real revenge. Not the photos, not the calm words, but the quiet truth that he no longer lived in my mind. Dylan and I started seeing each other more often. It wasn't romantic at first. It was easy, unforced, like my heart was relearning trust without the heavy chains attached. We went to farmers markets on weekends, laughing about how he always tried to pick the perfect tomatoes and failed every time. We'd walk through the city, past street performers and couples holding hands, and I'd realize I didn't feel bitter watching them anymore. I wasn't comparing my story to anyone else's. I was just present. One afternoon, while we sat at a park bench sharing coffee, Dylan turned to me and said, "You seem different now." I smiled. "Different how?" "Lighter," he said, "like you're finally breathing your own air." His words lingered in my mind the entire evening. The next day, I received an email from Ryan. He had tried reaching out through mutual friends since I'd blocked him everywhere. And now, here he was bypassing my silence through my work inbox. The subject line read, "I just want to talk." Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message was long, painfully long, written like a confession but steeped in excuses. He wrote that Maya had become difficult, that living with her wasn't what he thought it would be. He said she didn't respect his space and made him realize what he'd lost. There it was, the same pattern. Every failure needed a villain, and this time Maya wore the title I once did. He wrote that he wanted to meet, to apologize properly, that he missed my calm, my laughter, my understanding. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. He had mistaken my calm for weakness, my silence for submission, and now that he'd fallen from the pedestal he built for himself, he wanted to crawl back to the stability he'd destroyed. For a moment, the old part of me, the one that always wanted to fix, to understand, hesitated. But then I remembered the nights I cried myself to sleep while he told me I was the problem. The countless times he twisted the truth until I doubted my own reality. I remembered how he stood smiling in that kitchen like I was a stranger. I closed the email and hit delete. A week later, I saw his name again, not in my inbox, but on social media. A mutual friend had posted a photo from a small gathering. Ryan was there, sitting beside Maya, but his body language said everything his captions couldn't hide. The spark was gone. They sat like strangers sharing a table, not a life. She looked bored. He looked tired. I didn't feel triumph, not the sharp satisfaction I once imagined I'd have when he fell apart. What I felt was cleaner. Freedom. He had become exactly what he made me feel: irrelevant. That night, I posted one final story, not for him, not even for revenge, but for closure. A photo of the city's skyline, glowing under twilight. The caption simple: "Healing looks better on me than heartbreak ever did." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within hours, friends flooded my inbox with heart emojis and messages of support. I smiled, closed the app, and went to bed early for once. No tears, no overthinking. The next morning, Dylan texted, "Coffee before work," and I found myself saying yes without hesitation. As we sat in the corner booth, sunlight dancing across the table, he looked at me with that same easy steadiness I'd come to admire. "You really don't check your phone as much anymore," he said. I laughed softly. "There's nothing on it worth my peace." He grinned. "That's a good line. You should keep it." "Maybe I will," I replied, sipping my coffee. The world outside the cafe windows seemed wider now, like the city had stretched to make room for a new version of me. Later that week, one of my coworkers mentioned seeing Ryan downtown, walking alone. "He looked rough," she said hesitantly, watching my face for a reaction. I just smiled. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. She blinked, surprised by my calm, then smiled too. "Good for you, Lena." I nodded. "Yeah, good for me." Months passed, and life unfolded quietly but beautifully. My work began to thrive. I got promoted, moved to a brighter apartment, started painting again, something I'd stopped doing because Ryan once said it was a waste of time. Dylan was there through it all, not hovering, just existing beside me, like solid ground under my feet. We weren't rushing into anything, and that was the beauty of it. It wasn't a rebound or a rescue. It was something real, growing from respect, not control. One afternoon, while cleaning out my drawer, I found a small box Ryan had left behind, an old watch of his, a few letters, movie stubs from dates that once felt like forever. I held the box for a moment, then took it outside and dropped it in the trash. No tears, no ceremony, just release. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's not slamming doors or posting cryptic quotes online. Sometimes it's peace, steady, quiet, undeniable peace that speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Weeks later, Maya reached out. Her message was short. "You were right about him." I stared at the words for a moment. Not angry, not even smug, just done. I didn't reply. Some stories don't deserve sequels. Spring arrived, and with it came new routines, mornings spent journaling, evenings walking along the river, moments of laughter with people who reminded me that kindness didn't need to be earned through suffering. One Sunday afternoon, Dylan and I sat under the willow trees, near the water. He was sketching, I was reading. A light breeze danced through the air, carrying the smell of coffee and blooming lilacs. After a while, he looked up and asked, "Do you ever think about him anymore?" I shook my head, smiling faintly, only when I realized I don't. He chuckled softly, then reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "You've changed, Lena." I nodded. "No," I said quietly. I just stopped shrinking. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how different healing looked from what I imagined revenge would be. It wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right, about remembering that I was always enough, even when someone tried to convince me otherwise.